Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Welcome back to the show. We are so excited to have our guest of honor, Dr. Grant Venerable, joining us here today. Of course, he's our Professional of the Year. Ecstatic he joins us today live from California. We're going to catch up, see how his week was. I know we have some stuff to talk about. And we, of course, overall, we need to talk about his memoirs and all that he continues to do to help out everyone. I mean, society as a whole. You really have done so much and are nonstop. So how are you doing, Grant? Fill me in on the week. What's been happening?
Well, getting ready to move, looking at the new place I'm going to be, and the construction is nearly finished there. And then I can begin hauling things over. And that's always huge. I've done this about, I don't know, 10 times in my existence. And each time I said, I can't do this again.
I hear you. Well, I had a flood, so I have boxes of stuff everywhere around as well. I understand. It's not an easy task. Purging, packing, sentimental items. It takes a long time, but God bless.
It is. And the items I particularly... I was going through in some of my file drawers were notes that I had taken of experiences that I signed up to take over 40 years ago to really diagnose my life at that time and to see what's working, what wasn't working. And it was a great moment in which I learned a lot about myself and develop the techniques I've learned to actually reframe, what I call reframing reality. And it's a discipline. It's a discipline because it requires a strong will to reframe one's reality.
Yeah.
Even though we think we're being bombarded by evidence that reality is one way, when it really is another. And it can be any way we need it to be by the discipline of what is provided in our brains, in our hearts, and our colon. That's where all the equipment is located that enables us to look at what the group mind and the common human experience calls disaster or hardship, or things not working. And it can only come across that way by viewing the situation in a way in which one feels downtrodden or hopeless. And it's the art of a great leader to be able to help the people reframe reality. And that takes me back to some of the leaders that we've had in the 20th century.
Yeah.
We look at I mean, there were things on the news feeds that I get across my internet and my computer about the current occupant of the White House and framing reality one way, but you can look at it in another way, and it's much better that way. So I was visiting a vocabulary word yesterday, and I was at a lunch with friends, and I said, well, there's a word that it isn't a real happy word, but it can be turned around and used in an entirely different way. And that word is who stalks you? Who stalks you in your life? Who stalks you at a particular moment in your life? Is the stalking a good stalking force? Or is it a hopeless stalking force? And I realized I'd never thought about it like that.
Yeah.
So it was a new way to reframe my own reality when I make a statement. Oh, why did that happen? And I had to catch myself and say, okay, Grant, reframe it. What's really true? What are you pretending is not true? What are you pretending is true? And we're up against that as a people, a citizenry of this country, just with events since war started with Iran.
Yeah.
And uh, I think people, what I came up with yesterday is people have been suffering from the crime of confusion. It's a crime to contribute to the confusion of oneself.
Mm-hmm.
It's a crime to contribute to the confusion of others,
Yep.
let alone the entire people of the citizenry of the United States. And that is what, there's no defense against that except by the power of reframing. And when one goes back to foundational principles upon which this universe is grounded, which science has given us a, a deep understanding about. I don't mean at the scientist level of understanding, but the basic principles of what is true of the universe,
Yep.
what is true of the solar system, what is true of the planet, and what is true of life. So I focus a lot on life. I think we left off the last time talking about uh, things like imbalances. Life imbalance basically gets translated into a word we use called illness or disease. And our reality is so framed in the power and infallibility of the word of the clinician or whatever the physician is that we're visiting. And that's why I have been very selective with my healthcare professionals over much of my adult life. I have established them really as partnerships between myself and the professional
Mm-hmm.
know that we're in agreement on some basic principles, which means I shy away from practitioners that I don't feel I'm in agreement with. And I have new practitioners out here in California, and fortunately, they have been in tune as with my way of thinking, and and that's led to some uh, insightful moments, some happy experiences. Uh, Everything that has been a temporary illness or a condition of being less than well that's occurred since I got my PhD, which I had my PhD anniversary on Friday, March the 20th, at the University of Chicago. And that was the anniversary of actually receiving the piece of paper that said, you are awarded this Doctor of Philosophy diploma this 20th day of March, 1970. And I keep saying, gosh, that's a while ago. That means this was the 56th anniversary of
Yeah.
that. What
Wow.
does that mean to me today
You're right.
that it
With
did
Smith
not
Haven's
mean to
real
me
deals, the choice.
Oh my gosh.
56 years ago? And part of the meaning is, by golly,
By
and
golly
by
gee.
a lot of other factors and forces, I have survived all those years since getting that diploma.
Mm,
But how have I survived? I've survived to have a successful, well, several careers. I have survived economically.
yep.
I have survived through crises, family crises, professional crises. What is going on, Grant? Well, what's going on is exactly what you wrote in your memoir. So I could speak now more cogently, and I appeal to all of you who are listening to me right now that the ultimate measure of your success,
Mm-hmm.
your health in this life, is measured in I'll just say, the span of your years
Mm-hmm.
in your body on this earth. And the more span of years that you have
Yeah.
is more of a confirmation of choices you've made, near term choices just a few days ago, longer term choices that you made when you were a child, choices you made to even go to college, choices you made in college. I had to realize much later in life, in a way, I didn't have a choice because
Mm-hmm.
my parents had instilled that choice in me so that when I was in high school, I knew I was going to apply to college. There was just no doubt of that. I didn't need anyone to tell me I'm going to college. I did. It wasn't the best moment of my life because there was a lot going on interfering. Well, see, I had to reframe that
Mm-hmm.
vocabulary. I couldn't say interfering because it wasn't.
Yeah.
Whatever was interfering was in my own mind, how I interpreted circumstances that really were not the way I was interpreting.
Yeah.
And there were many factors. Others that we're talking to this morning out across this nation have had similar situations, no matter their walk of life. I had special circumstances that I had to learn to look at through the eyes of being a normal individual having perhaps unusual circumstances, and then asking why things happen. I would have
Mm-hmm.
talks with God because that was such a normal thing to do
Yeah.
when you're raised in a religious family. And nothing, thing particularly radical. It was a, a, a normal, average Christian Protestant
Mm-hmm.
family who had relatives and friends who were members of all kinds of religious backgrounds, from Jewish to Islamic to Catholic,
Yeah.
whatever backgrounds you could think of. But that was simply one more opportunity
Mm-hmm.
that my parents and my family had to model acceptance
Mm-hmm.
of everyone that we run across in existence, to allow their experiences, their ways of life to enrich our way of life. My parents always
Aw.
required that we respect
Yeah.
the religious beliefs of others,
Yeah.
uh, even whether they were different or close to our own beliefs. So all of that is like coming home as I get into what I call latter day years of
Yeah.
existence. I don't particularly invest in the terminology called aging because there's so much garbage in the vocabulary regarding
Mm-hmm.
people getting older. I'm not saying that people don't put on years.
Yeah.
We all, if we're successful, we have more and more years, and we have more and more opportunity for things to happen that might cause little bumps in the road here and there. And I've got a few little bumps I'm dealing with a healthcare practitioner,
Mm-hmm.
realizing it. I know what the cause was. I actually know the cause. So I'm telling my practitioners that I was experiencing occupational hazards that led to, oh, 20 years ago when I would have, oh, when I retired from my very successful but challenging job at Lincoln University, where I was the second in command of the university, which actually, in many ways, I'll frame this just right, was a more challenging job than that the president had. But I was the number two to
Mm-hmm.
serve that president, to ensure that education worked in that university, that we were hiring the right people, that we were assessing the ability of all of the faculty and staff to deliver their job functions, that I could deliver my job function, even if it was not written down on my agreement when I
Yeah.
signed up for the job. If
Mm-hmm.
you're a university
Yeah.
vice president for academic affairs, you are available
Uh-huh.
24/7
Okay.
to the president, to the president's cabinet, to deal with issues whenever they come up. And I tell you, we went through just about everything you could think of or not think of. One that's out there now with the Iranian crisis,
Yeah.
all of the politics around that. I dealt with things like that. Um, you're dealing with religion and politics and economics. when, when your president declares war
Uh-huh.
on another country,
Yep.
and you have to deal with it as well as you can. You
Yeah.
don't let it get you down. So one of my jobs at Lincoln, it would change day to day or week to week. In the winter, it snowed all the time in Pennsylvania, uh, 50 miles south of Philadelphia. And there were snows that would pile up to 3 feet deep in front of my screen door
Mm-hmm.
on the campus where I lived in
Wow.
my townhouse. And I said, wow. And it,
Whoa.
it meant the little snow plow had not
Yeah.
been around to plow the sidewalks or the streets.
Yeah.
But I had to wait for the snow plows to get out on the highway by the campus, so I could drive up to take my morning swim at 6 o'clock in the morning at the local YMCA. And that swim
Mm-hmm.
just brought me to life for the whole day. It raised my hopes for the day, and I'd
Yeah.
get back. So about 6:30, that's when the Human Affairs Office would call me
Uh,
and say, well, Dr. V, are we going to open the campus at all today?
mm-hmm.
Are we going to open it late today? What are we going to do? Are we going to declare a holiday or let people use their vacation time if they want to stay home? So those kind of decisions that people don't normally deal with in everyday life, I was dealing with, and things that you don't even think of. Like I was in a new building that I might have mentioned this once before, a beautiful new four-story science and mathematics building, just funded by the state of Pennsylvania. And I was working late one, I think it was a Saturday. So there's nobody around in the building. And I walked out of my office in the hallway on the uh, third floor, and I smelled what I thought was smoke. And I followed
Oh no.
the smell around
Mm-hmm.
to another hallway, and it
Mm-hmm.
got stronger and stronger until I found it in one of the laboratories
Oh gosh.
where students conducted physics experiments. And I looked in there and I could see the flames and the smoke on top of a laboratory workbench. And I took my key and I went in there, and what had happened, an experiment that had not been, where the equipment had not been put away, but it involved using a large magnifying glass that would sit in front of a lamp to focus the lamp on something the students were working on, except
Mm-hmm.
by not taking it down, the students and the instructors did not anticipate that magnifier was going to pick up sun rays coming through the
Wow.
big, beautiful windows and focus it right on a cardboard box that was sitting there on top of the lab bench. And the box caught fire. And no telling what would have happened if the vice president had not been in that building in his office. So I was able to call the emergency authorities to have it dealt with. But in the meantime, I went in there and moved stuff around. I moved this magnifying
Yeah.
glass so it was no longer causing the
Wow.
damage of the sunlight. But the principle that it was illustrating
Mm-hmm.
was very powerfully illustrated. How much you could just take a ray of sunlight and make it so hot that it would cause combustion there in furnishings in that room. But life is that way. Uh, when you're
Yeah.
born, you
Uh.
don't always know what you're signing up for. It's like, and for tasks not mentioned in the contract. from where you were before you came alive. Maybe it was in heaven somewhere. I have early dream images of what heaven looked like,
Of course.
and it got into some of my artwork,
Hmm.
but it looked like some of the beautiful
Yeah.
parks in Los Angeles. But I'm skipping from that to where we are uh, with war, and I want to mention the fact that when we had the revolution, the American Revolution back in the 1770s, and there were not more, and this is an estimate that I've heard, and I call it apocryphal because we don't know exactly, but the colonists knew that some of them were said, yeah, let's do a revolution and break away from the King of England and have no and not be taxed by where we came from. We would tax ourselves. And then a certain group of people stayed loyal to the crown of England. That war, the fact that it was won by General George Washington and his military comrades was quite an impressive achievement. And it led to the formation of this democracy 250 years ago. And it borrowed from the Declaration of Independence that
Hmm.
all men are created equal. And yet it was not a perfect document, the Declaration, nor the Constitution. But hopefully we begin emulating the laws of nature and realizing one of the hallowed, powerful principles of this universe is that life is self-healing and that natural systems are self-regulating. Right there is everything the founders of the Republic needed to
Hmm.
know what to install in the Constitution, because politically, over 250 years, those beliefs have changed, and competing groups called liberals and conservatives would argue over that. But even
Yeah.
the words liberal and conservative have changed.
Hmm.
And there was more of a balance between them, a recognition that we needed both viewpoints, we needed both belief systems to have a healthful republic and a democracy. But that seems to have shifted with
Yeah.
certain presidents and congresses in office, as there got to be more of a urgency for one group to take over and win elections at all costs
Hmm.
so that the other party out of power could never again have their say in government. Okay, now we get to the role of language.
Oh.
The role of language, that's where we have to watch what words come out of our mouths and reframe reality and use words that are appropriate to reframing reality. So I'm trying to get my right spectacles on here because I'm going to repeat again, and I'm going to put out there probably about 13% of the people back in the late 1700s were eager to have a new republic. But in any system, I I suspect that's about the right number for any system that you develop, whether it's a political system, a technological system, and that the people that develop it, you might be in 13% agreement about how the system is supposed to work. Well, that's come up with a lot of people worried about will certain people in the administration today set it up so that only one point of view will be advanced.
Hmm.
Congress need not be consulted, and certainly not the people, because the people will do what we tell them to do, which is what used to happen when we had kings as sovereigns is, and there's a movie about the young Empress of Russia, Catherine the Great, and it was a very lovely movie. And part of that was Catherine being quoted, and it was actually the mother-in-law of Catherine, or the grand, what was her position? Redgrave
Oh, I'm
played
not
that role.
familiar. Oh, okay.
Vanessa Redgrave.
Okay.
She was the Empress of Russia at that time, somewhere in the 1740s or 50s.
Okay.
And she was telling her chancellor, well, what about this new gal,
Yeah.
Catherine, coming in? She's she has to accept the Church of Russia, which is the Orthodox Church.
Mhm.
And so the Archbishop was saying, well, she's learning her lessons well, that she won't be pushed. And so the Empress uh, uh, Elizabeth says, well, she'll either have to accept it or go back home to Germany or
Yeah.
Prussia, where she's from. And but anyway, she gave the Archbishop a little more time to foster the situation.
Mhm.
But but her statement that was revealing was that when the her chancellor said, "Well, what about the people? They may not tolerate this younger woman coming in from a different, the Lutheran faith." And uh, the Elizabeth, the empress, said, "The Russian people will do what I tell them. They will be what I make them to be." That's the attitude of what an authoritarian monarch does. That's what was so bold about the American experience. It said, it declared, we will not have a ruler any longer. No one is going to tell us what to do. It has to be conferred with the people through their representatives in the Congress, the Senate, the House of Representatives. So that really is really just a setup for really where I want to go today. Um, we have a similar situation in the news media where the news media doesn't play the role it used to play even
Mm-mm.
40 years ago or 50 years ago. We only had three networks,
You're gonna say it's bias, right?
and bias is something we've always had because all human beings are biased one way
Yeah.
or another
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
And I have my biases and I stand by them, but I also listen to the
Mhm.
biases
Yes.
of my colleagues and friends. And so I
Mhm.
can say, well, let's see what we can do to compromise on that one, rather than say, you will accept what I believe.
Exactly.
We're very close to
Yeah.
having that happen
Mhm.
in this society without, and they seem to be changing now. And just going in and attacking Iran,
Mhm.
that was a bold move right
Yeah.
there. But it is also in the process of backfiring.
Mhm.
I say that not out of a saying, well,
Told you.
I could have told them so.
Yeah.
It comes out of now an understanding on my part of what my event
Okay.
of March 20th, 1970 meant.
Oh.
It meant I had mastered a discipline of reasoning called critical thinking,
Mhm.
where critical thinking becomes the standard by which
Okay.
one makes choices and then makes decisions. And that critical thinking came about
Yeah.
from working on systems. A system is a collection of interacting parts
Yeah.
or elements. And there's a rule of procedure that instructs each part how to act upon all of the other parts. Now, that's out of human hands. Even when humans build a system, whether it's a computer or a political or a religious organization, it has parts that have defined roles. And once you set it up,
Yeah.
you own it. It happens. It's not going to easily change, even when you want it to. And that's the role of bureaucracy, is to preserve a system. Now, we get this kind of, we get our noses bent out of shape, and we speak
Sure do.
irs- disrespectfully of, oh, it's a bureaucracy,
Yeah.
you know, bureaucracy, this and that. But a good bureaucracy has a good system of buffers within it, so that my systems are chemical systems. So we have to have certain kinds of compounds in our blood
Yep.
to make sure that the acidity and alkalinity of the blood stay within a narrow range, that they don't vary outside that range. Because if they do, it
Yeah.
could impair the health of the body
Yeah.
and its blood pH. And the pH, of course, is a measure of alkalinity, and pOH is a measure of that's the alkalinity. The acidity is the pH. The alkalinity is the pOH.
Oh, okay. Trying to remember my chemicals.
Um, so where I'm coming to now is beware who stalks you. The word stalk, 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 or is it
S T
STAULK? I don't know.
and S
Uh,
T A L K, like a stalker. Yes.
A
Yes.
AULK. And it's good when you can arrange to have a good stalker in your
Yep.
life. And that's where I think one of the purposes of religion is that people choose their religions to have a good stalker who guides them and guards them from
Mm-hmm.
harm and takes care of their needs. If they're out of a job, that stalker stalks them. In other words, tails them
Yep.
to try to counsel them. No, go that way. Don't go this way. And then there's counseling. But all of those are good stalkers in your life. If you think critically and you evaluate who or what stalks you. And I realize I've been skilled at doing that. Not always, but I get better skill if I make a mistake. So that's a lot of what I like to write about and read about. So when I read all of the many hard luck stories that flood the media, by the media, I mean not just the computer internet, I mean, but the television,
Mm-hmm.
the radio, the cinema. We just had the Academy Awards a
Oh
week ago,
yeah.
and that's one of the tribal rituals of this society. And some people are very don't like the way the awards are these days, and some do, and
Mm-hmm.
but they've been around since, I guess, the 1920s or something like that, or early 30s. Uh, but they always evolve in a direction where things work out. Now, I want to get back to the contingency of forces to counsel our audience to stay away from things that cause confusion in oneself. And that is, when I see that happening to myself, I know that the thing I'm watching or observing is really confusing,
Yeah.
because I'm not easy to confuse. But I am good at changing channels, but
Yeah, me too.
going to see the movies I want to see. And because I can feel it in my chest cavity when I'm being upset by what I'm taking in, whether it's the 6 o'clock news or whether it's so-called entertainment on one channel. But if I get disturbances, it goes off. And that's the best advice I can give as Professor Venerable or Dr. Venerable, is to replace the input either with silence or something that we find calming and pleasing.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
That
Dr.
gets back
Venerable, you are on a roll today. Go ahead. Go ahead.
any. Does everyone have the phone number? Because
Yep,
it would be
631
great to.
307 4010. Guys, lines are open. Please feel free to call, ask any questions. 631 307 4010. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Because it does help me
Yeah,
to know what I need to say or to clarify when
you
I
bet.
get calls
Aw,
in. And but the thing is about what I I thought up years ago. I call it the double shadow, which you've heard
mm-hmm.
that term. I talk about the double shadow, and I want to pull that up from my screen
Sure.
here. See, where are you here? There it is. There's a few other novelists who use the term the double shadow, but mine came about 2 years ago when I
Okay.
realized I didn't have an adequate introduction to my memoir.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wrote a sequel to the memoir, and I'm going to add that to the what people can order on the line. But the sequel to the Footprints in the Chaotic Unknown series, let's see. Wait a minute, that's not the one I wanted to say. There it is. So while the memoir describes a 3 century exodus of my family's uh, of my family from 17th century to 21st century America, uh, it portrays the power of the double shadow, a force that can create or destroy. This force is linked with Jubal, a descendant of Cain, who was a grandson, something like that, of Adam and Eve. And Cain was the forebear of music. And this force is linked with, well, Jubal, the forebear of music, but that was an ancient Hebraic tradition. The shadow joins together the mind's two parts, namely the unifying fides, trust and fidelity motif or part, and it unifies that with its complementary flip side, the divisive part, the phobos. Phobos represents fear and envy, that kind of motif. And this is a circumstance that has shaped human existence since Eden. The shadow is central to love, relationship, education, and learning, art, philosophy, and music, from philharmonic music to jazz, and from the mathematical sciences to technology and literature. The double shadow is also implicated in humankind's either or, us, us against them, labeling urges, which we see in terms like cultural divide, woke or wokeness, race, gender, and other hyperbole. Happily, a universal both and them our us spirit is again stirring in the land. So, volume one and all the other volumes begin with the prequel. And the prequel's title is From Dawn, Eden's Dawn to Freedom's Light. And the subtitle is God's Race and History in the AI Revolution, which weaves an apocryphal tale about Elohim, one of the Hebrew godheads, and primal others in the Garden of Eden. They record events on distant Earth since Adam and Eve's rejection from paradise. And so that's what the double shadow is about. It talks about this interplay between different things. Can you you still there?
No calls yet. Um,
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to make sure you still had me on screen. I'm trying to
oh,
get mine back here, but that's all right.
okay, okay, okay.
Sometimes computers can be fickle. Um, but I wanted to go from there um, to what brought about my thinking about the double shadow. And what did, it's bothered me for years on the debates following the Holocaust, precipitated by the Nazi regime in Germany back in the Hitler's day in the 1930s and the early 40s. And there were a lot of conjectures as to what would cause human beings to do to the Jews
Mm-hmm.
and other groups in Germany that they didn't like. What made people do that? There was a rabbinical scholar named Richard Rubinstein who wrote a book,
Wow.
published it in 1975, and that book was called "The Holocaust and I'm trying, I think, and slavery." I think it was something about slavery, but the bottom line here in terms of the double shadow is that whatever causes one group to oppress and persecute another group, I felt had
Yeah.
to be something innate in the
Mm-hmm.
human organism. Then the question was that I'd looked at for a long time was what makes it? Did you hear that? that, that was my cat.
Oh, was that? No. Oh, sometimes he or
I
she
think
pokes in. She?
she was trying to jump up on my lap. So, but um, I wasn't satisfied with uh, many of the discussions that just couldn't come to grips with. Are some people just innately evil and others are innately good? But I couldn't really come to a final conclusion until I realized I experienced something similar in myself,
Mm-hmm.
something I never thought of myself as harboring violence against other people until that moment when I had lost a position in university and I was in bad shape. I was upset. I was angry. And the fact that I could think of harming other people whom I blamed for that scared me.
Yeah.
And I knew I needed to get help to work on that so that it would never get out of control. But that really was my first confrontation with the double shadow that lived in me. And I realized it lives in everyone, every human being that exists, and that there is a way to deal with that. And it has a clinical aspect to it. It's just like if you fall down and you get a bruise on your leg or your arm or on your face, you get clinical intervention to accelerate the healing of that jarring to the body. But the body, the self, is not just a physical body. It's also an invisible component called the mind and another component called the feelings or the emotional intelligence. And all three of those have to stay in balance and in harmony, or things like what happened in the Nazi regime are subject to happen. Because a lot of the theological questions that came up that never quite satisfied me is around why do bad things happen to good people? How can bad things happen to good people? And I turned around and said, when do good people do bad things? Even to bad people. And I would have to say that that's what's uppermost in my thinking as I watch the news and I make notes on what I'm going to say at the next podcast. I am also saying there is something in physical law, chemistry, physics, mathematics that predisposes us to the experience that we call karma, Karma, which comes out of India. comes out of Buddhism. And those are very important ideas, but I'm happy to have them available. They're in my memoir so that people can live in greater balance within themselves, and that karma is a very real part of our lives. So, um, where are you on that, Jill?
I gotta ask you this. You've been doing, I know, your work, and you're here still pushing through and helping others. And I wish someone would call to give us some feedback to, your work and what you still have in the future. But right now, no one has called in. And
Yeah.
I just feel that every time we speak, you're always talking about, well, you bring something new, obviously enlightening to the table. And we touched upon a
Yeah.
little bit of politics in the beginning of the show. And one thing someone at the station was just texting me, asking about, because you were talking about, the war in Iran. And I know you're not
Yeah.
in government, you're not whatever, but they said they heard what Grant said, and they this must have stuck with them. They said, why does he think
Yeah.
it's how does he know it really is the worst choice right now? He said, what have I missed in the news? He's like, I thought things were going okay. So that's what I'm looking at on
Yeah.
my phone. I'm like,
Well,
good question. I'm like,
well, everyone is framing it in their own ways based upon their beliefs and predispositions. But one attempts to do when they're conscious enough is to listen to the power of the inner voice speak, which has been rooted in all cultures across the earth for thousands of years. And that's the part of oneself that tells us when we're on the holistic track that brings us health,
yeah,
that brings us calm, that brings us mental well-being, it brings us creativity. And I'm saying this in terms of my own clinical seekings right now to find the right people in the neurological universe to restore my ability to walk as vigorously as I walked in my 30s. And I don't see it as something that can get worse because I always reframe my reality as a healing reality. The healing is already taking place. And just rather like a last moment testimonial, when I met the neurologist, who's a young woman, I guess she's in her late 40s. Uh, she actually grew up in the same neighborhood I did in Los Angeles. And when she walked into the room, I had a feeling of calm.
mm,
It was as though she established her credentials with me, namely that she knows what she's talking about. She's there to listen to me on how do I feel when I walk, and that's valid, just as valid as her having her associates do
yeah,
what we call nerve testing and with a live electrode to, you know, release a voltage across my
mm-hmm,
nerves
wow.
and then do an MRI where my whole body goes into this NMR, this MRI machine. Well, that MRI is powered by what we call a klystron tube in the
I was
sciences.
just in one on Friday. This is amazing. You're telling me this. Uh-huh.
But that klystron revolutionized structural chemistry and physics. It allowed us to look at the structure of molecules in the body based upon vibrating their hydrogen atoms at a certain frequency and then projecting a radio frequency uh, beam across the sample, and we know what the structure, we can figure out the structure of that molecule. So, but the thing, apart from all of those marvelous technologies, when I left that doctor's office, I actually felt better. I felt it was like a jolt of electricity being transmitted from her to me that was accelerating the healing process, which is innate and natural in my own body.
Mm.
And when I went to see her for a follow up last week, the same thing happened. even though she had a clearer picture as to
Yeah.
what was going on. So I'm going back for a couple of more tests next week. But that's the good news about a test. That's what they're for, is to give an expert more vision about what's going on and what's not happening properly in one's body. But this has happened to me like maybe every 10 years. And as I said earlier in the program, it's like whatever I'm doing vocationally, it has certain occupational hazards to it. And once I went from being a professor full time and became a university administrator full time, I took on a whole different set of stresses upon my body.
Oh,
And that's when I
When my hair started.
learned that the body actually, through the intelligence of the mind, can transform those stresses of the job into actual physical feelings and manifestations. That's probably the most radically important thing I can leave our listeners with today. And that's why I'm saying be careful with what we take into our minds through our eyes, through our ears, through our sensors, whatever's our sensors, and whatever impression we're getting, to reframe it to the impression we really want to have
yeah.
in living day to day. And that's what I'm doing right now with my own healing processes. So I don't baby myself. I
Mm-hmm.
don't try to do the easy way, but I try to always give my muscles a
Mm-hmm.
little extra challenge without overwhelming them while the body heals entirely. So that's it. I think
Perfect.
that's a good place to start to wrap up.
Oh, beautiful. Well, thank you so much. And if we want to reach out to you, hear more, see more memoirs, what do we do?
Well, one thing to do is just Google my name, Grant D. Venerable II, but realize my father had the same name except without the second. So you'll probably find a lot of his information and his achievements as well as mine. But the website is Grant D. Venerable phd.com, all lowercase, and that will take you to where you can make a connection. Well, my email is ventwo at aol.com, and just put in the subject line podcast question.
Oh, well, thank you so much. We appreciate you, Grant, for always being here. And wow, we really appreciate you. Thank you so much. You enjoy the rest of your day.
Well,
Good luck with the packing. When is the official move happening?
okay, thank you, Jill. Thank you.
Hopefully soon. Good luck. Good luck. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
When I was little, I didn't talk for a long time. I liked things to always be the same. Anything new or different would scare and upset me. I was very sensitive to lights and sounds. It was almost like I had bigger eyes and ears than everyone else. So I built secret hiding places where nothing could get in. I didn't like looking people in the eye. It made me feel uncomfortable. I'd throw big tantrums over little things like when my socks didn't match. Sometimes I'd do the same things over and over. Until one day, I found out I had autism. My family got me help. Slowly, I learned how to live with it better.
You can see signs of autism in children as young as 18 months. Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org/signs. Brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.